Good morning. Welcome to SES Academy. I'm Skip Brown. Today's lesson, this will be the fifth in our series. We're going to actually take a motor starter apart, go through a simple control sequence. But before we do that, I would like to go back to something we discussed previously, and that would be the actual control transformer. The control transformer has a primary of 480 volts, and the secondary is 120 volts. Now, a transformer is a strictly linear device. What I'm going to do for demonstration purposes is I'm going to take an extension cord and put 120 volts on the secondary, and you're going to see a meter reading of 460, 480 volts on the primary, okay? So without further ado, let's give that a try. I've taken a field wire, brought it in right off of an extension cord. Of course, I've grounded the frame, and I'm taking 120 volts to the secondary of the transformer. I've pulled the high voltage fuses. That would be these fuses right here that would have been in the secondary. We're going to apply voltage, and you'll be able to see on the meter that in the primary, or in the secondary rather, I've got 120 volts AC. Now the primary would be normally where I receive my power, but since this is a linear device, you can see there's 454 volts on the secondary of the transformer. So this is where the 480 would come in, and the 120 would provide me with my control voltage. So that'd be the 120 volt controls. That's what we use a transformer for, and this is how we derive that safe operating voltage for all of our operating equipment. It's our safe voltage for limit switches, push button switches in the field, where we don't want 480 volts on the controls. We want to use 120 volts specifically, or even 24 volts in some applications to operate the pumps. So take a break and we'll move into the ladder. Okay, moving right along, now that we've got the transformer figured out, what I've done is I've wired the control power into the control circuit. This is my hot coming off my extension cord. I'm going to keep the fuse in the circuit. The neutral is tied into the neutral bus on the control side. And of course, I'm keeping the frame grounded. Always want to be safe. So let's take a look at our basic function. First thing we have is we have a control power on. Okay, control power on switch. Let's go to a ladder diagram and see what that looks like. Okay, start out with let's do both sides here. Okay, this is my X1. This would be my neutral, because remember, we are grounded. Okay, hot wire. I have a selector switch. Contact. Off position, it's open. I switch to on. Go. We're going to have an indicator light. I want to take this all the way over to our neutral. Okay, very straightforward. Now, bear in mind that once that power comes on, that's going to be the power that's going to determine everything that we're going to do. So I'm going to take my number one rung and almost disregard it at this point. All of my power, all of my control power now is going to come off of this point. Okay, this no longer becomes a viable source. I have the ability to switch my control power on and off. Let's take a look inside the cabinet and see what we've just drawn. Looking at the outside of the cabinet, we've got a power switch on and off. Inside the cabinet, what that looks like is this switch right here is turning this light on. On the X2 side, I've got the neutral right here, and wire number 1 comes off of this switch, and that's going to be my wire 1. So I'm going to stay consistent with the wiring in the cabinet. Well, this is going to be my number 1. This is going to be 1. And if you notice, 1 goes to the light and then comes off the light and back into the control cabinet. So that's why I've got this rung here. This number 1 is going to be my input power to all of my inputs, outputs, and so forth. Okay? When we look inside the cabinet, of course, I've opened it up, but most of this stuff has been covered with Panduit. Now, when I say Panduit, it's this assembly, makes for a nice, neat wiring installation. And these are covers that snap onto the Panduit. I've opened it up for instruction purposes. When you finish the project, of course, you always want to put the covers on, make a nice, neat project of it. Now, next thing we want to take a look at on the ladder diagram is how we're actually getting power to the pump run point. I've got a control relay here that's going to come up later, normally closed contacts. Now, these contacts are going to open up if we have an alarm. From there, I'm picking up a constant hot. As long as I have no alarm situation, I have a constant hot on wire number 3, which has an external terminal. Okay? From there, I go to an HOA switch, okay, handoff auto. In the hand position, I'm going to make this contact right here. Given the control relay's clear, current's going to flow through this HOA switch straight to the coil and turn the light on. Okay? So let's take a look at how that operates. Control power on, pump 1, hand. And you can hear the hand relay kicking in. Okay? If I go to lead pump 2, doesn't make any difference. When I'm in hand, I'm bypassing the selector switch. I can put either one in hand. Okay? This hand indication is a parallel output, so we have to put these two outputs in parallel. This is my pump run light. That's the green light we just had on. And this is the relay contact engaging. We're going to open up the cabinet and take a look at the relay pulling in. Lift the switch, watch number 1. You can see the relay actually pull in while I'm hitting the hand switch. Okay? Relay contact, overload block. These are all my control wires. So, wire number 12, in my ladder diagram, wire number 12 is going to engage the pump motor, the pump starter coil. In automatic, I am only going to go into automatic when I want to have a float switch control the pumps. Now this tab right here, number 3, and this tab number 10 are going to connect through an external contact. So I'm going to have a contact from 3 over to a level switch, and then from there down to 10. Okay? The level switch indicates that the water level, I should have drawn this differently, I'm sorry. The level switch, it tells me when the water level is low, it tells the pump to come on. Okay? When the water level drops, 3 drops out, okay? Shuts down the feed on 10. Now let's take a look at this. When I go to automatic, I'm going to close these contacts right here. These are now open. Remember the brown here, if you can see the brown only makes contact when the switch is in the left hand or H position. Okay? But the automatic side is going to drop out my normal power feed, pick up my feed from number 3, go through a level switch, if you will, back feed through the selector switch for the pump, and then energize the coil. So what I've done to make this work is I put a jumper inside the control panel from wire number 3 to wire number 10. That's wire 3 and wire 10. 3 is a hot off of the relay, and 10 is the input for the automatic operation of the pump off of the level switch. So, control power on. I'm going to select lead pump 1. I'm going to go to auto, and it's going to energize. Okay? That's because the jumper is simulating that switch. I'm going to disconnect this jumper. Same situation, pump 1 works in hand, does not work in auto. For the pump to work in auto, I have to make 3 has to make 10 through the switch, which I simulated with the jumper. So what we have is an HOA, we have a pump selector switch, we have a motor starter for pump number 1, and we have a motor starter pump run light. Okay, now there's other circuitry involved here. We're going to have some alarm contacts. The pump's going to alternate automatically and so on. But this is a typical handoff auto operation to run a pump. Now bear in mind that the pump motor, once again, the pump is running on 480 volts. There's no 480 shown here anywhere. Everything in here is just 120 volt control that's telling the motor when to run and when to shut off. Okay, it's also telling us if we have high level alarm and so forth. Okay, but there's no 480 here whatsoever. The HOA switch, there's one for pump 1, there's one for pump 2. Basically, they're going to be carbon copies of each other. The pump selector switch, I've only drawn pump 1. When I go to pump 2, I'm going to pick up 11 and another number, and we'll draw that in just a moment. So fundamentally here, we've got the 120 volt power, we've got control power on and off, which makes our number 1 right here, our hot, only to indicate that we have power. Off of a control relay, a safety relay, we're picking up all of our voltage, all of our control power is coming off of this safety relay, and that's feeding all of our pump commands. It's also feeding our level switch and any alarms that we're going to have. Okay, this is going to be part 1 of 3 parts on this motor controller. The next part we're going to look at is going to be pump 2. It's going to be a carbon copy of pump 1, okay? And then finally we'll look at how the alternator works and what we get for alarms. So that concludes this part of the lesson, part 2 to follow. Thank you.